Welcome to Digital Learning at the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, bringing world-class management education from the beautiful campus at IIMB to you through the internet. The Digital Learning Initiative at IIMB aims to build a platform for making knowledge more accessible to a global society. So join us in this exciting journey of teaching and learning. Hi, welcome to IIMB. We've got a lovely campus here and we're here today with Professor Ramya Ranganathan. Professor Ramya Ranganathan is a faculty in Organizational Behavior and HR Management at IIMB. An electronics engineer from IIT Madras, she holds a PGDM from IIM Ahmedabad and a doctorate from London Business School. Her personal passion is to help people find joy and meaning through their work. And indeed, in the past 4 years, Professor Ramya has reached over 2,000 participants through her courses and workshops on topics like positive psychology, leading with joy, personal values, goals and career options, and managing stress. Hello, Professor Ramya. It's such a privilege to have you here with us today on this lovely morning at IIMB. And we're going to talk about your online module on managing our inner world. Now that's an intriguing title, Managing Our Inner World. How did you come across this title? Why did you choose this for your module?
Okay, so good morning. And so before I entered the field of organizational behavior, I used to work in technology and process redesign. And so what we would typically do is leverage technology to re-engineer business processes and to make them smoother, make them more efficient, effective, and all of that. So when I entered the field of organizational behavior, which in layman's term is the science of managing interpersonal behavior and intrapersonal behavior at work, I brought the same mindset that I used to use in technology and process redesign to the way I approached organizational behavior. Indeed, so now we are looking at managing people dynamics, managing the interpersonal processes between people, looking at behavior, but from the same re-engineering point of view about what changes can you influence and how they are happening. That is what I would call a classic approach to managing the outer world. The longer time I spent in this field, however, I started realizing that there is another approach that we can take as well when we're dealing with human beings as opposed to machines and technology, which is managing the space in our minds, which is what I call inner world, the space of our own private thoughts, emotions and feelings, perceptions, attitudes, beliefs, which usually no one else has access to except ourselves. But managing these thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and cognitions can go a long way in helping us do the same things, do things better, make processes more efficient, effective, productive, all of that, the same outcome. So that's what I mean by managing our inner worlds, and that's what we're going to focus on in this module.
That sounds really interesting. Now you said that by managing our inner worlds, we can have better outcomes, improved, better quality, better interactions with people. Now, would you be able to go into the details of what are the benefits one gets by managing one's inner world?
Sure. So there are profound benefits to be got from managing our inner world. And in this module, when I talk about managing our inner world, I'm going to take a very purely cognitive point of view, which means we're just going to talk about managing our thoughts, beliefs, and the frameworks through which, the lenses through which we look at the world. So our inner world and our outer world are in continuous conversation with one another. So what I mean by this is that they might seem like two different worlds, but they literally feed off one another, with events and experiences in one forming the stimuli and triggers for the unfolding of events and experiences in another. So if you're going to look at the benefits of managing our inner world, we don't have to limit ourselves to intrinsic benefits. Let me tell you, for example, one of the benefits of managing our inner world, and by this I'm taking a very cognitive approach to managing our inner world. So we're looking at the thoughts, our thoughts, attitudes and beliefs. So some of the benefits of managing our thoughts, attitudes and beliefs are intrinsic benefits, benefits that I feel in my inner world itself. So I might feel calmer, I might feel a sense of more clarity when I'm thinking or trying to make decisions. I might feel more confident, I might feel empowered. So these are intrinsic benefits that I reap in the inner world itself. But when I say that the inner world and the outer world are in continuous conversation with one another, what I'm trying to say is that the benefits are also translated into the outer world. For example, if I am feeling more confident, I take that into the way I perform, into the way I behave and the way I interact, and therefore I influence my performance, which translates as a benefit in the outer world. If I'm feeling, if I have an attitude where I'm trying to if I'm interacting with somebody in an interview or in an important meeting or a negotiation, and the frame through which I'm approaching this negotiation is one where I'm giving the person a benefit of doubt, or if I'm approaching the situation willing to look at what there is, what are the good things involved in the situation, then I actually open myself up to explore newer possibilities in that negotiation or conversation, which otherwise the dialogue would not have taken us into. So this is a tangible benefit in the outer world that is triggered by me managing my inner world prior to the meeting or negotiation, but also during the meeting or negotiation. I think what lies at the heart of this whole approach to managing our inner worlds is the subjective nature of human experience, as opposed to machines and other instruments, right? And that's been my journey from engineering to psychology or behavioral science, my key learning. So what do I mean by the subjective nature of human experience? I think the best way to approach this is with an example. So let me tell you very briefly about an experiment. So this experiment was conducted with hotel maids, and it's an old experiment. It's not a new experiment, but it's very interesting. So this was done, I think, across 7 different hotels, large groups of maids, the ones who usually, mop and vacuum the corridors and spaces in the hotels. So half of the maids were actually taken through a short induction program where they were introduced to the benefits of the activity that they were performing, in the sense they were talked about how similar mopping or vacuuming is to a cardiovascular workout, and that's it. The other half were not told anything about this, right? So after a few months, when the results were compared, the group that had been briefed about the similarity of their movements with physical exercise showed greater fitness levels. They had lost weight and overall general improvement in health. So what does this show us? It shows us that although both these groups of maids were doing the same physical activity, so I would say their objective movements in the world was the same, but their own internal subjective experience of what they were doing was different. The subjective experience of one group was, hey, I'm exercising, and the subjective experience of another group was, I'm just doing my work, I'm just cleaning, I'm just going through these movements, and that made all the difference. So this whole attribute of the fact that as human beings we experience things subjectively rather than objectively lies at the heart of, and this is what gives power to us to make things better through managing our subjective experiences. And to do that, and we can do that through managing our thoughts, our attitudes, our beliefs, our lenses and perceptions. People in marketing know this very well. So for example, so you've seen all these advertisements by Coke, which create associations between Coke and happiness. Drink Coke makes you happy. True. So you drink it, and true, some of the happiness might be because of your personal preferences and your taste and whether you like it. But a lot of it also comes from the fact that your mind now associates Coke with happiness. Just like for the maids, it associated these movements with exercises, and that makes a huge difference. That's why people spend so much money on advertising.
And that sounds really interesting, especially this concept of subjective experience, which you mentioned. It does make a lot of sense now. In real life, we don't just interact with a bottle of Coke. We have real interactions with one person or a group of people, maybe in a discussion, a meeting, or an interview. In such cases, we not only have our own mental models, our own inner worlds, we also have the other person's subjective experiences. So how does all this play out?
Wow, yes, fascinating. So it just gets more and more fascinating. So let's take an example, right? So very true. So the Coke has an objective reality, and then we experience it through our subjective lenses and our subjective experience. What happens, let's say, in an interaction with another person? The simplest way I can put it is the event, the incident, the meeting, the negotiation, the interview, whatever it is that we're talking about, no longer is just a static experience like the bottle of Coke, right? We are co-creators. So we co-create that experience in an ongoing fashion. So there are two levels of complexity. One, it's not static. We are bringing our inputs into this event, this negotiation or meeting or interview. Two, it's evolving, it's ongoing, right? So which makes the power of working on our own inner worlds even more potent. Let me explain how this happens. Let's say I'm going into a meeting. I take with me my thoughts, my attitudes, my beliefs and experiences. And initially, just at the start of the meeting, something happens, something is said. I interpret this just like the Coke experience, but I interpret this based on my models, my attitudes, my beliefs. So when I've done some pre-managing on my attitudes and beliefs, I have a head start in interpreting whatever happens in a way, in the direction that I want it to go. And then I respond. When I respond, my response again is dependent on my thoughts, my attitudes, my beliefs, my frames. What am I looking at this? Am I looking at this as an opportunity, or am I looking at it as a threat? Am I looking at it as something to, just defend myself and put up a brave front, or am I looking at it as a whole new field waiting to be conquered? It makes a lot of difference. So this brings us to the same point of the conversation between our inner and outer worlds. It's ongoing, and the extent to which I leverage what I can play around with in my inner worlds, I influence what happens in the outer world. And that outer world is a shared outer world between me and the other people who are co-creating that experience. And so it forms triggers and inputs for their inner worlds and their subjective reality. And then it comes out, and then so I just have an ongoing space of influence, and it's not a one-time management. It's an ongoing process of managing our inner worlds, is how I would put it.
Well explained, really well explained. Now I'm pretty clear on why managing my inner world is going to help me so much. So far we've only been managing outer world. Is it possible that managing inner worlds is more important than managing our outer world?
So good question. Let's take an analogy to get this, to sort of tease apart this idea a little more, to see, it's inner world versus outer world. Because sometimes we do hear people debating, is it more important to pay attention to managing our inner worlds, or is it more important to go out there and just do things and make things happen? I think we can drop the verses. I really think we can drop the verses, because there's no reason why you have to do one and the other. These are not things that are contradictory. They are not things that if you go east, you can't go west. You can do both of them. And I'll use an analogy here that might make more sense. we all want to be healthy, right? At least I want to. And to be healthy, it's important to build your immunity, to work on our immunity. And yet, I don't think any of us says we're going to work on our immunity to such a great extent that we won't care about our surroundings. We'll go and play in garbage heaps or go to the most germ-infested areas. We also take care to manage our outer spaces because it's important. We want to keep those germs away, but we also want to work on our immunity. That's the analogy, yeah. So we want to work on the outer world. We want to do things that we think are going to help and make things better. We also want to work on our inner worlds because we can experience great leverage through doing that.
So whom did you think this module on managing the inner worlds is going to be most useful for? Did you have a particular audience in mind?
I think it can be of use to anybody who has a mind. Really, it's because anyone who's a human being is subject to subjective experience, and we deal through our minds. We process things on the basis of our minds, and the extent to which we can leverage our own minds in improving performance or productivity, improving the quality of relationships. If any of these is something that you're interested in, this module is going to be useful to you. It's really going to be useful to anyone who wants to. I think the attitude is important and the intention. If you want to bring about positive transformation in your own lives, in the way you experience things, either in your own inner spaces or the way you react, the way you respond, the way you perform, the way you interact with other people, this is for you. I think you'll find this interesting and useful.
Now, I would have thought this would be a very difficult topic to teach. How have you structured this module?
Wow. So, indeed it is difficult. It is a difficult subject to explore in classes, and what I found is that although people feel inhibited in the beginning to sort of start just jump in and talk about something like subjective reality. Once we start looking at how the brain functions, once we start looking at, hey, this is how the mind makes sense of information, this is what is happening, these are the biases that we're subject to, these could probably be the evolutionary reasons why our mind gives attention to certain things and not certain others when in certain, under certain contexts. People get very interested and excited, and it doesn't seem like a very philosophical concept anymore. It just seems like rewriting programs. It's a bit like software programming. Like we have programs in our minds. We continue to have these programs and frameworks, and we're just looking at them just like you would look at the operating system of a computer, and it becomes very technical rather than being philosophical, and it becomes and I think that's the experience that you'll have as we go through the module. As you go through the course, you'll stop looking at this whole notion of subjective reality as what is this? But you'll start looking at, okay, I have a mind, I'm carrying something, I have a brain that I'm carrying around with me. It's like a computer, but according to me, it's far more elegant and beautiful and interesting. But let me try and understand what's going on. What are the things that are going on with my notice, without my notice? What are the things I'm aware of? What are the things I'm not aware of? For example, the same Coke happiness association. A lot of us might be carrying it, but we might not be aware of it. Now, once we're aware of it, hey, that makes us more powerful, right? Now we can choose what we want to do about it. So the way I've structured this module is we start a little technical, right? So we really start with looking at the process of sense making, looking at phenomena like bounded awareness. What is bounded awareness? Sounds fancy, but in layman's terms, it is limited perception. None of us are ever aware of everything that happens in our environment. We pay attention to selected things only. That's our human limitation, if I may say, or just an attribute of being human. We talk about concepts like confirmation bias, which is an inherent human tendency to look out and seek out data and information that will validate the beliefs that we hold to be true in our minds. So put confirmation bias together with bounded awareness, and immediately you'll see that when I get into a new situation, I go in with a preconceived belief, idea, or notion about what I'm going to experience or see there. And because of confirmation bias, I pay more attention to the stuff that's going on which supports what I think should be going on. And because I don't see everything that's happening, and that's just a phenomenon of bounded awareness, you can see that this could just lead to what we call in psychology as a self-fulfilling prophecy, where more and more of what I want to see actually starts happening. I behave that way. It's sounding a little voodoo now, but when we go through the technicalities of it, I promise you, it won't sound voodoo anymore. And it turns out to be quite fascinating. So you and I could be in the same meeting or the same discussion, we could witness the same thing, but we could come away with very different takeaways, very different subjective experiences, and I think people relate with that. And when we see that the key to shifting, so if I want my subjective experience to be a little different from what it is, maybe I want it to be more like yours, or maybe I want it to be more open-minded, or maybe I want it to be more energetic or open to possibility. When I realize that the keys to making these shifts are actually with me, because the software is out here and the programs are out here, and these programs I've been picking up these programs from like advertisers and mommy and daddy and teachers and culture and a whole lot of other places. But when I see that these programs are there, and I have the key to rewrite these programs, I have the key to acknowledge the existence of these programs, I think participants usually find it very empowering, and it doesn't remain a very complex subject anymore. In fact, it's a fascinating journey of, very practical with practical implications. And we will in this module we will look at the science. We start with the science. We explore the workings of the mind, of the memory. That's another part that's very fascinating. We tend to think that our memory is a static record of things that happen, but there are no static records, because what is the interval at which it's recording? Every nanosecond, every microsecond? What we carry is just a set of associations, and every time we recollect, it's an act of creation. Recollection is a creative act of recollection. So it's like storytelling. So the same process of subjective experience, when we get data in from outside and make sense of it, the same thing works even when we're making sense of what happened 10 years ago, when we were playing with our memories. So we sort of put all of this together. We look at how the mind works. In the second part of the course, we start looking at strategies. We start looking at, okay, now that we have an understanding that we have all these scripts and programs and associations in our mind that are driving us, what can we do about it? And we start looking at ways and possibilities of letting go of associations that we no longer want to hold on to, and also cultivating habits and technical processes through which we can build new associations that we want to have. So it's going to be quite fun. I think it's going to be useful, and it's going to be hard work to implement, but nothing comes without hard work, so that's what is there.
So now this no longer sounds like voodoo or something very difficult. And I remember you'd once said knowledge sets us free. So I think after undergoing this course and listening to what you have to say, and people will begin to set their minds free, unlocking all the confirmation biases. I think that's what you said, and the bounded awareness, and be more open and enrich their experiences. Thank you, Professor Ramya.